So what's Kundalini? It's absolutely the right question to begin with. What is Kundalini? Before any talk of Kundalini has been awakened and this and that, do you ever stop to examine what that really means? I mean, leave off talk of the god and goddess natures for a moment. They're far too metaphysical and metaphorical, and they lead to a lot of confusion. More confusion than clarity. So let's begin with a bit of science. Correlate that with Vedic spirituality. Now, in the Upanishads, it's been written that the human being is comprised of 5 layers of being. They're called koshas, or sheaths. There's a physical layer, which we're all completely familiar with. It's called the food sheath because it grows and develops based on the energy that we put into it, generally converted from food. The second container of our being is the prana layer. It's most often translated as the layer of our life force. This life force or energy manifests physically as breath. You might be familiar with the exercises called pranayama, which use breath to stimulate and invigorate and invoke and stoke the life force. Now, breath's not the only way to achieve the stimulation, but it's an active one. And physiologically speaking, this sheath is represented by the body's chemical and neurological and electrical life functions. Read cells and neurons. And there's a sheath of mind. It's resulting from the brain and central nervous system, all contained within the previous 2 layers of being. Interestingly, one layer of being corresponds to midbrain function, while the next layer of being, the 4th sheath, is directly linked with the cerebral cortex. There's 4. And there's one more sheath. It's called a bliss sheath in the ancient writings. Modern science has yet to correlate this with brain location or function in much the same way as it's yet to determine the causality behind the gamma waves generated by emergence from deep meditation or when we emerge from deep meditation. Gamma waves, they remain above the frequency of neurons, the neuronal firing, but researchers have understood them to be produced when one experiences feelings of altruism, love, bliss, higher consciousness. They've been recognized, and it's now speculated that these gamma rhythms modulate perception and consciousness. And so we come to Kundalini, that very special spark, something like a God particle within each and every living being. Now, if the 5 just mentioned are at the root of every spiritual science, Kundalini is the 6th, binding them all together. She is the force, the God in you. Now, awakening the God means it's finished, done. There's no more for you to do. End of the road. Somebody says enlightenment and this and that. There's no good word to describe the experience of the Kundalini risen. Maybe someone can say nirvikalpa or sahaja or nibbana, but actually the experience of the awakened Kundal is not only visceral and fully conscious, wherein the 5 sheaths of you are completely individuated and clean, but further there's something akin to a oneness with nature, wherein I, as original nature, am now something like a co-creator. And there's another word for it too, Ritambara Pragya. I am fully synchronized with nature, in sync. It's not just me anymore, it's we. Consciousness is not subject to the 5 sheaths of mind at that point. You know, we are the higher mind, the broader mind, the greater mind, whatever you want to call it. Mind is not your own, it's shared, and there's no suffering. Not in the traditional or typical definition of the word. I mean, it's still a human being, still feel, still suffer, of course, but not like I hear in all these tales of, whoa, my Kundalini has risen and now I'm in great distress. God has woken up inside of me and now I'm suffering. Do you hear how fucking ludicrous that sounds? It's a severe misunderstanding. The pranic system, it can definitely undergo distress, of course, but that's not the meaning that Kundalini has risen. At least not according to the tradition that gives us the word Kundalini. Maybe you can say she's stirring a little bit or something, making ripples. There's an entire science, art, evolved around this concept of Kundalini. Kundalini Yoga, Kriya Yoga, there's a thing to it. And most of you know the word chakra. A few of you might even have an idea of what they represent. Not the 7, not the Asta chakra or the 9, but try to wrap your mind around the background. The wheels, they go round and the wheel of life goes round, and yet it's all background for Bhagwan. And then you have to explore all the nadis, the connections, and then there are the knots, the granti, the 3 big ones, and they have to be untied before the consciousness of Kundal can unfurl. This is actually a really big deal, folks. This is something. This is the subject of what is Kundalini. Kundalini awakenings, and oh, my Kundalini is awakened, I woke, and blah, blah, blah. The good news is, speaking at the level of the pranic sheath and dealing with the elements that everybody's familiar with in one way or another, it is only necessary for the briefest of moments to give up thinking that you know something in order to allow yourself to understand something else. For instance, I hear about a lot of people wanting to activate the chakras. And you should know firstly that your chakras are already activated. If you're alive and basically in good health, then your sheaths are also basically in good health. If not practically inextricably roiled up in the complex associations of manifold impressions, samskara, accrued not only in this life, but if cellular memory is actually a thing and Vedic wisdom really is unassailable, then many other lives too. And all this has led to an infuriatingly obtuse psychology and circular conversations that can never be resolved simply for the fact that for every thesis, its antithesis also exists. See how easy it is to get blown off course on a tangent? Back to chakras, science, and what is Kundalini? The lower Muladhara chakra is correlated with the inferior hypogastric plexus and all that implies. In other words, if you're excreting, you're okay. Now follow your understanding of the chakras all the way up to the brainstem. Vacha. Now, as Patanjali says when he opens his sutras in Book 1, Samadhipada, now we can talk about yoga. Atta yoga anushasana. Now we get to talk about how many % of that brain we're actually using. And what is that unused portion doing? How are those gamma waves produced? What is that which science is not yet able to document because scientists are also using the same amount of brain power? And what is that which is holding the whole story together? What would you call that book if the whole story were known? Some people call that God. Others, Kundalini. And so begin the metaphors. So now perhaps you've brought your imagination all the way up to Agya Chakra, 6 on the scale of the infinite, and your vision is such that your pineal is decalcified and your bone marrow oozes DMT and your gyan is such that you can imagine something. And yet even the sages get stuck at Sahasrara Chakra in the crown. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Here, the myths and legends and metaphors allow a creative glance into the possible and the impossible. Ask yourself if, like Nilakanta, Lord Shiva, ask yourself if you can drink the entire ocean of poison and hold it in your throat. Can you do that? I heard once somebody who was calling themselves Kundalini Awakened was having trouble in the grocery store because she constantly felt assaulted by all the negativity around her in the supermarket. It was a classic hand slap to forehead moment. When Rudra Granti, the final knot, has been untied, you will be able to deal with the poison of the whole world. And again, what does that even mean? Suffice it to say, the negativity of the people around you won't really be a thing anymore. Kundalini is the purified vehicle. Kundalini is the purifier. Kundalini is the result of the purification that doesn't happen in this one life often. And just consider about the sublimation of the lower chakras for a moment. What does that look like to you? Go beyond emotions. That's only one sheath. Kundalini is not a feeling of this or that. It's not an emotion. Emotions are tied to the lower mind only. How does sublimation manifest physically? Remember, all the sheaths are but containers of the one self. How it manifests in one layer is going to be necessarily how it manifests in another. Perhaps it takes you a long time to sublimate the energy of the chakras. Here's where meditation and yoga and kriyas and this and that come in for teaching you how to be on a focused path of awakening and evolution. And when the energy is sublimated, You'll realize it's sublimated beyond your imagination and emotion because you'll be connected with the nature in such a way that your awareness will be expanded to new possibilities and new potentiality. New potentiality will suddenly be awakened in you. There will be no doubt. I know this completely from experience, and this is what the sages mean when they refer to the siddhis or the mystical powers. They look like mystical powers from the outside, like a child looks at his parents accomplishing some feat as yet beyond his ability or comprehension, but it's not so wild a thing. It's the natural result of the evolution. And the sages go further and they say not to go chasing after these siddhis because it's the long way around to the goal, and you might practice for years to achieve some heightened awareness, but you've kept yourself from focusing on the goal, which is to evolve, to unlock the whole stuff. And at the same time, with your eye on that goal, the siddhis are going to manifest anyway. And then you will know without a doubt, I've arrived at the place, I've arrived at the goal. It'll be proved to you without a doubt that evolution is occurring, that you're on your way and you're not going to care about any of that even a little bit, much less the suffering of mind. And so the correlation with sahaja samadhi, which is but a state of being anyway. They're all states of being. We're all in states of being. Kundalini is our nature itself, our evolution, the entire human nature from beginning to end. And as Gopi Krishna rightly pointed out from the depths of his madness, she is definitely our evolution, for sure. And anyway, she can't be bought in a shop and bundled up in a $50 shot pot. That's not how it works. I think Obi-Wan Kenobi said it best in Star Wars. The Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things, surrounding us, and penetrating us, and binding the galaxy together. Now, perhaps like the gamma wave emissions, there really is something to the whole high midichlorian count in really awakened individuals, and understanding those high levels will be indicators of a quicker evolution. But science hasn't told us that yet, and we might have to wait a few more centuries before data of that particular caliber can be produced. But awesome things are happening in the world of physics now. More studies are being made of the mystical yogin every day. Soon, very soon, I'm sure, the right correlations will be observed, the right questions will be asked, the right experiments produced and replicated. Sooner, I hope, will come a more standardized level of language and education to bridge us, standardization, bridging our ideas and our knowledge and our conceptions, giving us a even playing field to work with together, a sturdy bridge of knowledge that links us together in undeniable fraternity and kinship. Kundalini is, after all, our collective mother, and we are all collectively that. Tattvam asi, aham brahmasmi. Jai Shankar.